Hi, my name is Lauren Monson, and I'd like to share some thoughts with you about flipped classrooms. Let's first consider why we might want to adopt this strategy in our classrooms. The International Society for Technology and Education provides students and teachers with standards to help us integrate technology into the everyday classroom in more effective and transformative ways. Let's look at three of the ISTE standards that relate directly to flipped classrooms. Standard 5A encourages teachers to use technology in ways that personalize student learning experiences, differentiate for individual needs, and support independent learning. Standard 6A suggests that teachers create a learning culture that fosters student responsibility, both individually and in groups. And Standard 6B asks teachers to integrate technology-driven digital platforms and environments into student learning. Let's also take a moment to reflect on the traditional classroom model. For centuries, education has been a teacher-centered system where a sage on the stage disperses knowledge into students' minds. That sage creates, administers, and assesses the curriculum, which could be described as a one-size-fits-all uniform. The traditional classroom model teaches to the average student and risks ignoring high achievers and struggling students. In a classroom of 30-plus students, the teacher cannot hope to provide individualized learning and feedback. She stretches herself thin, doing the best to respond to her students' needs, but ultimately some students fall through the cracks. During class time, the teacher provides direct instruction, often in the form of a lecture. She then assigns the students homework as practice with the lesson's material. Whatever questions or challenges they face during homework time, they must wait until the following day and class to resolve them. Some educators felt that this was an inefficient and inequitable way to teach. They developed a new strategy known as flipping the classroom. To put it simply, a flipped classroom switches the kinds of classwork and homework the students do. At home, a student watches pre-recorded videos created or selected by the teacher that provide direct instruction for the next day's lesson. At school, the student has the opportunity to participate in learning activities that practice the information from the videos. This means that each student has immediate access to the teacher's help as problems and concerns arise. The students can also use the new information to participate in meaningful collaborative interactions. Teachers who have implemented the flipped classroom model report numerous pedagogical benefits. First of all, the flipped classroom model minimizes interruptions and off-task behavior. If a student has a question about the direct instruction, he can rewatch the video or look up additional resources to find the answer. If the question arises during class, the student can ask the teacher without interrupting the other students' learning and wasting their time. This creates a student-centered atmosphere in which students actively direct their own learning and take responsibility for the outcome. Another pedagogical benefit of the flipped classroom is that it relegates low depth of knowledge activities, such as direct instruction, to time outside of the classroom. This saves precious classroom time for learning activities in which students can develop their higher order thinking skills, such as synthesizing and creating new information. It also reserves classroom time for meaningful activities and experiences, such as project-based learning, which encourages students to construct their own questions and pursue authentic solutions. From the teacher's standpoint, the flipped classroom provides a valuable digital database of past, present, and future lessons that can be reused and easily updated. Such a resource also helps support teachers, such as those who assist special education students, English language learners, and at-risk students. Whenever one of the students needs extra support, that teacher can go directly to the database and know what's being taught. Finally, teachers of flipped classrooms can customize and differentiate by providing alternative or supplementary videos for their students. Individually, students also report various benefits of the flipped classroom model. First and foremost, students can teach themselves material by reviewing videos in the database. If they need more time to understand a new idea, they can simply slow down or pause the video. If they have in-class questions about the material, they can ask their teacher directly and get personalized assistance. This is especially helpful for shy students and English language learners who might not otherwise feel able to ask questions in front of the whole class. For gifted learners, this means they do not have to wait through other students' questions when they already understand the material and are ready to move on. The flipped classroom also allows students to complete the practice phase of the lesson in the classroom, where they can get immediate help as needed. This way, they do not risk doing a whole assignment the wrong way before being able to resolve their questions with the teacher. As students direct the pace and style of their learning, they become more motivated and responsible, and they recognize that their education is in their hands. In short, the flipped classroom model has a lot of great advantages. You may be wondering then why flipped classrooms are not more ubiquitous. Just as with any teaching strategy, flipped classrooms also have some challenges. One criticism of the flipped classroom model is that in many ways it resembles the traditional classroom experience. The teacher still provides direct instruction, and the students still complete practice activities. Although some of the learning happens outside of the classroom, has anything really changed in the way the education is delivered? A second concern about the flipped classroom is that it exposes students to new content at a time and in a setting when they are alone and unable to address misunderstandings. A third challenge is that many students still lack access to the necessary technology to participate in a flipped classroom. Obviously, it would be unethical to implement a flipped classroom if some of your students could not access the direct instruction videos. Perhaps the most common argument against flipped classrooms speaks to the fact that some students simply will not do homework. Making homework a video may make its completion easier, but that does not necessarily mean that unmotivated students will suddenly begin doing their homework. As a result, the teacher will have to deal with students who have not received the direct instruction necessary to complete the classroom learning activities. Beyond student-related challenges, teachers also run into a number of issues when implementing the flipped classroom model. First of all, it can be an extremely labor-intensive strategy, since teachers usually create most of the direct instruction videos that they use. Another potential obstacle to the flipped classroom model is its reliance on technological equipment. While most computers now include cameras and microphones, they do not necessarily provide quality video creation editing software. A teacher who is serious about flipping her classroom could end up spending a lot of money. Educational researchers also warn that if the flipped classroom model becomes ubiquitous, students could potentially face hours of homework time in front of computer screens, which might lead to screen time burnout that would ultimately demotivate students from doing their homework. These same researchers point to the fact that various educational studies have demonstrated only a modest positive influence from the flipped classroom model, which may not justify the amount of time, effort, and resources it requires. All good things to keep in mind before committing to a big change in your curriculum and pedagogy. In response to some of these concerns, some teachers began flipping the flipped classroom, making minor adjustments that mitigate some of the most common concerns. This alternative model continues to use video clips for direct instruction, but reinstalls this phase of the lesson during class time. Students watch the videos as bell warmer activities, which ensures that all students have equal access to the material. Although flipping the flipped classroom cuts into some of the student-centered learning time, it still leaves most of the class period available for effective practice and exploration activities. In short, it overcomes most of the challenges of a flipped classroom while retaining many of the benefits. As I mentioned earlier, the flipped classroom model is a favorite of teachers who regularly engage their students in project-based learning. Project-based learning encourages students to develop and research their own lines of inquiry. One reason why PBL works so well with flipped classrooms is because flipped classrooms maximize the time allotted for student-centered learning activities. The time that would usually be consumed in direct instruction can instead be used to go deeper into exploring the students' questions and solutions. Whatever research, experiments, or labs the students need to perform, they can get that much more done in a flipped classroom. Flipping the classroom is a relatively new instructional idea, probably because it was just not feasible with former technologies. Built-in microphones and cameras are now standard equipment, and there are many free and low-cost resources for finding, creating, editing, and publishing online instructional videos. Many teachers of flipped classrooms use programs like YouTube and iMovie to create and share their videos. If you're camera shy, you can use programs like this one, Powtoon, to animate your videos. In addition to the technology for video creation, teachers should consider adopting an easy-to-use learning management system, such as Google Classroom, to distribute and store the videos. Let's take a look at how an example of a flipped classroom might work in a 10th grade English language arts classroom. In a traditional setting, students can expect to complete a warm-up activity, receive direct instruction, participate in text-based reading, and answer oral or written comprehension questions. In a flipped classroom, the students would watch a video of the direct instruction as homework. In fact, the teacher could create videos of the reading selections, which could be delivered as homework also. Then the students would arrive in class ready to respond to comprehension questions and able to participate in deeper learning activities. These activities might include analyses of comparative texts, class discussions and Socratic seminars, original student compositions, and additional research opportunities. My students recently learned about Shakespearean sonnets. I provided direct instruction on the structure and elements of a sonnet. I then showed my students how to analyze and deconstruct a sonnet and gave them time to practice the skill with partners. They paraphrased a sonnet and then wrote one of their own. If I had been using the flipped classroom model, my students could have received all of that time-consuming direct instruction via video clips. Then they could have arrived in class ready to analyze, paraphrase, and write their own sonnets. Best of all, the students would have had time to share their work and take pride in their learning. As I reflect on the two lessons, it's obvious that this activity could have been so much more effective via a flipped classroom. As we approach the end of this presentation, let's take some time to reflect on what the flipped classroom model might look like in your class. Some questions to consider are, how would I implement this in my classroom? How would my students respond? Would I feel comfortable with this model? And is the outcome worth the effort I would have to put into making this a success? I would love to hear your feedback via the link to the Google form below. Thank you so much for your time. This is Lauren Monson signing off.